Welcome to the new normal. Gas is up. Food is up. Lumber is absolutely crazy. I had a state senate friend of mine post that he paid $12.39 for a single 8-foot 2x4. Worse, with inflation, my entire raise for last year, gone. Welcome to the Democrat magic wand, but there is a cure. And that cure is liberty and Freedom RoundUp. Welcome to Freedom RoundUp. I'm Shaun Horner, Executive Director of the Heartland Fund Incorporated. And joining me today on today's podcast is, in no uncertain order, but the one I wrote it in, Greg Moody, former GOP Regional Director, political strategist, and master of she said.
That's what she said.
And also joining us is Kress Cambers, campaign manager for the Jeff Coleman campaign and treasurer of the Jackson County GOP.
Hey, Shaun.
Jeff Coleman, representative of the 32nd District of Missouri.
Wow, I'm not the least this time.
And last, and certainly not least, is my lovely wife, Michelle Horner, president of the High Noon Republican Women's Group and exploratory candidate for the 2nd Representative District of the state of Missouri.
Hello. How you doing?
Hey! And there's everybody.
Hey.
So, Jeff, what do you think are the chances of a special session? What might we see? What's going on?
I think there's a really good chance of having a special session this year. Obviously we always have a veto session in September, but I think there will be additional special sessions. I think one of them will be, hopefully, based upon elections. There's about 3 things that we tried to get through during regular session that it just didn't happen.
Right.
One being photo ID, another being, which is one of the biggest issues, initiative petitions. So I think we'll get one that happens in reference to those 2 issues, maybe a couple others.
So the photo ID, that was the voter photo ID, or is this something different?
No, that would be voter photo ID.
Okay, so is that gonna be tied in? Do you think that's gonna be tied in with the real ID, your driver's license, or is this something different, or how's that gonna work?
It'll definitely be something different. It's what it's about is making sure that everybody that comes in is legal and that they have a photo ID to prove that. So I know there's a lot of pushback on the Democrat side. They want to say that it's not fair, that it puts the poor people at an what's the word I'm looking for?
A grave disadvantage.
Yeah, huge disadvantage. But it's not true, because the state will help them get their photo ID. They don't even have to pay for it.
Well, and when who was it? It's like Fox News and OAN and no, there's another one. They all went to talk to blacks in New York City, Georgia, Texas, and one other like Democrat area, and they all asked them about them obtaining an ID, and they were all insulted because they all had their own driver's license.
Yeah, I mean,
You have to have that to even have a bank account anymore, right? I mean,
So their narrative falls apart with IDs.
See, and that's what I don't understand. We have to have an ID to buy tobacco products. You have to have an ID to buy liquor products, and you have to have an ID to open up a bank account, like you said.
And an ID to get into the Democratic
Convention.
You're right. But anywhere we go now,
You have to have
an identification.
You have to have an ID to get into the Capitol.
You're supposed to have an ID to drive, and if you don't, you get a ticket.
For the Democrats to hijack.
Hijack.
I don't know where that came from.
How many states have you had already?
Hijack nothing.
California.
I'm from California.
Greg said it.
Remember, that was twice.
Remember, do it right.
Close.
Nope, you didn't do it right. Remember, clink, and then what do you say? Golden State.
Golden
State. Oh, yeah, there you go. Hijacked.
For the Democrats to hijack the entire narrative, I think it's kind of egregious.
It is egregious.
And
big words.
And you can see where their narrative is actually turning. It really is the soft bigotry of low expectation that because the inner city is majority black, they don't know how to get an ID or they can't afford to get an ID.
Well, they can't even use the internet. They
And then you got Joe Biden. They can't use the internet.
And there was something else. And I mean, a lot of people are very offended. I mean, that are in the inner cities.
Rightfully so.
And so it's just, and it's all right that they can call the Republicans, us Republicans, racist, but yet
Right.
they're blatantly, obviously racist themselves.
Right.
Craig, being a transplant from California.
That is true.
There you go.
Wait, what were you supposed to say?
Golden State.
There you go.
Anyway, the question I was going to ask is it just ignored there to get social services, with no ID? Do they just ignore that piece when it comes to bank accounts and everything else? Because
No. But they do ignore it while voting. I mean, the funny thing about voting in California is you do not have to show an ID, anything at all. You just walk in and you say, I'm this person. They ask you to sign. And that's it. And they hand you your ballot. And
Well, the one thing that you can say is if you don't show your ID when you vote, you can vote wherever you want as many times as you want.
well, and the other thing was I had brothers who went away to college, and it actually took years to get them off the voter rolls. And I just think how many times did somebody, yeah. Like it is, California really makes itself vulnerable to voter fraud. And I think there's a ton of it going on, but
yeah,
Yeah.
well, and you never know as long as they vote correctly.
And don't you have to
exactly.
to get government funds or
No.
government checks? You don't have to have an ID for
No.
that to sign up for it at least.
Actually, yes, you do.
Well, from that standpoint, but I'm talking about the illegals that come across that are
No, I'm
That's
talking about
different. Like if you were an American citizen and you went to the
Right.
Social Security Department, they want to see your
Yes.
Social Security
Yes.
card
Yeah.
and
Yep.
your driver's license.
right.
Oh yeah, just
To
like
get
just like any
anything.
bank
But
account,
if you're an illegal alien, no, you do not. Which is sort of funny. I mean,
Is
and
that
the only
why they
reason
want
I
open
know
borders?
that is because
Yeah.
I helped a lady that came across the border illegally, but she got married to an American citizen.
Okay.
And she did not have to have any of those to show when she went to social services. And I was a little bit shocked.
Did she have to show anything that
All she
where
was-
she was previously from?
No.
No type of photo
They
ID?
give her this packet, and she was going place to place, but she was blind.
I mean, you got to have this stuff for food stamps, right?
Yeah.
Do the illegal immigrants have to show any type of ID for food stamps
I don't think they do.
or welfare? That's what I'm talking about
I think
with the
they give
welfare
them.
program.
I just think they give them paperwork, just like they're flying in all these international flights all over the to anywhere in the United States they want to go. There is no ID that these people have. These people literally are given a packet by the Catholic charities and able to fly anywhere. Where we as American citizens can't do that. They're literally giving an open ticket to go anywhere in the United States.
So I guess that's why we're saying, okay, roll with me, guys. So you just said that as illegal immigrants, they're able to roam and get these welfare funds, get these government, gosh, what's the word I'm looking for? Benefits
Yeah.
without ID. The American people
Can't.
can't.
No.
But I guess this is why conservatives or Republicans, they want,
Accountability more than anything else, I think is.
but I guess this is why conservatives or Republicans, they want, oh, let's make this fair across the board and not give it away just to anybody, but it's accountability for your actions. Where's the money going and how come and what for?
Yep.
And Jeff, so this voter ID bill, would it, I mean, it's got some accountability in it? Do you know?
Accountability from what standpoint?
From the standpoint of illegals trying to get IDs in the state of Missouri.
Oh, yeah, I mean, it's, you're going to have to provide legal information to get your photo ID. Now, the state is willing to help in that process. The Secretary of State's office will do all the background check as, if you haven't had your marriage license or your birth certificate for some time and it's from another state, Secretary of State's office will go through the process of getting that for you.
Getting that set up and getting that
and taking
retrieved.
care of all the fees and everything involved with getting that ID. So yeah, there's definitely going to be accountability in who gets those
Because
IDs.
it's not trying to keep anyone from voting. It's just making sure that everyone's on the same page.
That's
Everyone
right.
is treated the same.
It's making sure that you are legal
Yeah.
to vote in this country. And if illegal person coming in to the states illegally is not legal to vote.
Well, we can't have John Q. Public vote at voting poll A and then decide to go down to
Voting polls
C.
D or C, yeah,
Yeah.
and or C and D and do it,
right, and do it multiple times, more than once.
That's right.
which they are seeing in some of these audits, by the way.
Yeah,
Seeing
oh,
people that voted multiple
Maricopa
times.
County, we're seeing this.
Yes.
Sorry.
What was the second thing you brought up?
Initiative
Jeff?
petitions.
Initiative petitions. I want to talk more about that because we touched on this last time, and I wanted to do a little bit more because a lot of folks I actually had some of our listeners ask me questions about the petition. Can you because they're actually out of state.
Yeah, I think this is a good idea to talk about.
Sure. And this is something that needs to be reformed. We're,
Yeah.
we're one of the few states in the country that even allows initiative petitions, which means an initiative petition is the ability for one of our residents of Missouri to get a petition signed by, I don't know all the details right now under
The
current
numbers,
law.
yeah,
It's
whatever.
a certain amount of people out of 6 of the 8 congressional districts. Well, first of all, 6 of 8 congressional districts, that means 2 of the districts are left out. So if you have 2 districts that are left out of this, they don't even get a say-so in whether that petition goes to the people.
Right.
And then when it goes to the people, just like the mob rules.
Yeah, which is why we don't have a true democracy.
That's
We have
right.
a representative republic.
Right.
That's exactly right. Mob rules, you get Kansas City, you get St. Louis, you get Springfield, and you get Columbia.
Boom.
Those are the only cities in the state of Missouri that would even have to vote to pass anything. So every time we pass an initiative petition, and everybody wants to say, well, it's the will of the people. It's the will of the people of those cities.
Yeah.
It's not the will of the people in Missouri.
Yeah, no.
And that's the thing that frustrates me the most. So initiative petition reform doesn't do away with initiative petition. What it does is it makes it more difficult for this to get on the ballot because it makes it to where all counties or all districts have to be involved. So 8 out of the 8. And then they have to have a higher threshold of people who actually sign the petition. And there, at that point in time, it makes more sense for
Yeah.
that to happen. Because what happens with the initiative petition
Okay.
is that the initiative petition gets on the ballot. If the people vote for it, guess what? It changes the Constitution of Missouri.
Yeah,
It changes Missouri Constitution, so
And
what-
that's the part that people don't understand. It's not just you're voting for whatever, like light rail or whatever. No.
Or marijuana.
Or marijuana. It's you're voting to have this amended, appended, however you want to
That's
say
right,
it,
amended.
to the Missouri State Constitution, which,
Right.
as you said last time, was what?
It's
Ridiculous.
huge. It's huge. And actually, every 10 years, we have the ability as a legislature to actually start all over with the Constitution.
Okay.
And while that is politically a very, very big issue, it needs to happen because
Yes, it does.
our United States Constitution is about 100 times smaller than our Missouri Constitution.
Well,
Oh my goodness.
No, it doesn't change, right? To change the United States Constitution, it's hard, right? It
Right,
is
right.
hard.
And it should be just as hard to
It
change
should be
Missouri
ju-
absolutely.
Constitution. I can't
Well,
believe they actually
It
ever
should be
passed
structured the same way. It should be structured
Yeah,
the
that's
same
it.
way.
No, I agree with
Every
you.
county should say, yes, we're okay with
That's
this,
right.
Right?
That's exactly right.
If we're going
Well,
to
you're
do it,
never going to do Jackson County and
Well,
those counties.
I can tell you that I believe that if we can get into a special session and get everybody to focus in on this issue, that we will get that changed and it will be reformed. We are not taking away the ability of the Missouri people to make changes to the Constitution or to whatever law they want to change.
right.
We're still allowing that to happen, but we're making sure that every person in Missouri, not just the few, get to make that decision.
Right. Or not just the population centers.
That's right.
And if you could make, because we've all studied, well, thankfully we've all studied. I don't know about kids now, but we've all seen the United States Constitution. And it fits in a little booklet and is easy to understand. I don't know that I've ever read the Missouri Constitution.
It would take you a while. It would take you a while. Well, here's the thing. I just mentioned marijuana just a few minutes ago.
Right.
Marijuana is in the Missouri Constitution. Guess what else is in there? Bingo. Bingo is in the Missouri Constitution.
Yeah.
I think wasn't that one of the first thing, initial petition or something?
No, it wasn't one of the first. It's just one of the many.
It was back in 2018.
18, that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but again, another petition that changed our Constitution.
Yeah, why in the world do we have bingo as a change in our Constitution? It's part of our Constitution now. That's embarrassing.
So let me say this. The United States Constitution and the Bill of Rights, that is set up for government not to impede on the liberties and freedoms of Americans. The Missouri Constitution is the same way, but now there are laws inside of the Missouri Constitution that do just that. They make law and they impede on the rights of Missourians.
So anyone who's still questioning this, I just, on the side note, I looked up the Missouri State Constitution,
Okay.
which is available from the Secretary of State's office online right
Okay.
now, and you can get it in electronic format, PDF. Guess how many pages?
6,000.
6,000 pages.
Oh my God.
What else?
I don't really have a clue. I just know it's like really thick.
Yeah. Do you have a guess? How many pages? Don't look.
675.
675. Any guess?
300.
300. Everyone went over. It's only 230. It's only 230
No,
pages.
230.
It's still smaller than the catechism, so I read the catechism, so that can't be that bad.
I was closest.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Yeah, but
You
you
are
went
pretty
over.
close.
But
You
you went
still
over.
went
I did go over.
You did go over.
I should have bet $1.
You should have gone with 1 page, even though it is not. So yeah, I mean, I'm going to keep this bookmark because I'm very curious now to take a look and see what other interesting things are in there for the next time we talk about initiative petitions. 'Cause
Exactly
I'm
right.
sure that if I do keyword searches, it's going to be kind of insane. Because if you're saying bingo's in there, so you've got bingo, marijuana. Oh, I bet you've got the originally, this is going back a couple decades, the boats.
Yep,
The betting boats. Because we couldn't have gambling dens. They had to be on river boats.
Clean Missouri.
Clean Missouri's on there. Just
What's a clean Missouri mean again? Does that mean clean water or clean,
That
clean
means
environment?
people can actually hide the money that comes
That's
from. The money
right,
comes
yeah.
from.
Yeah, I
Which
know.
makes it impossible for not having PACs for the Republicans.
yeah, because you can't have big donors anymore.
You can't have big donors to help
Nope.
you with your.
No big
PAC.
donors.
No big donors.
But the PACs can have big donors.
But
Yes,
the PAC
they
can
can.
have big donors, which hides money, which a lot of Republicans are against. But that's the only way you can actually run a race in the
Well,
state
you
of
can't
Missouri
really
anymore.
hide money as a political action committee.
Well, you can't. No, you can't
You
hide
can't hide
it. It's
it,
just
but
that
it's
the fact-
harder for them to get the information who's donating.
as a Missouri resident or any other resident of the United States, but especially in Missouri because of the way our laws are now because of Clean Missouri.
Right.
It is harder for you to identify where the money is coming from.
Oh, yeah.
When you start talking about PACs,
Yeah, no, it's true.
political action committees.
Push and action videos, so.
This podcast sponsored by.
It was a great lead to our to your PAC.
Listen, there's nothing wrong with PAC. Clean Missouri, what it did is it made it more difficult for people to give money to political candidates.
Right.
It put a limit on it, which I get the purpose, and I get why they would think that that's the right thing to do. The problem is, as I mentioned, it makes it harder for, let's say, for example, a corporation wants to give someone $20,000.
Right.
Well, they can't do that anymore.
No.
Because first of all, in Missouri, a candidate cannot accept money from a corporation. So what that corporation does then is they will set up 10 different PACs.
Yep.
And they will give $2,000 a piece to those different PACs, and that PAC then can give that candidate $2,000 which is the maximum from each PAC that they have set up.
Yeah.
So in essence, they're still getting the same money. They're getting the 20,000. They're just getting it from 10 different places, and it's all coming from the same place.
Yeah, that's, and you were talking about, and the problem what we always have is you always hear the politicians being bought and sold, blah 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 blah. The keenest example, and the one that I used that you gave me, was just how much it cost you to send out a simple mailer.
One mailer, $5,000.
Yeah, and he's not even a concentrated district, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you don't even have.
I mean, you're talking about someone in any political position. That's just how much it costs to send out a mailer that talks about you as a candidate, so people actually know who you are.
Right.
Because you can't possibly get to every single person in the district to kind of talk to them and let them know as a candidate.
No.
And especially if you're new.
Right.
As someone that's been in office for a while, people get to know who you are and how you vote, and they either like you or they don't like you.
Right.
But for the newer candidates, there's no way that they have an option or an opportunity to compete with someone who is already in office, because there's no way that they can reach everybody.
Yeah, and it's even worse because the thing that I've had folks mention back to me is, well, why don't you just buy TV or radio ads? And it's like, okay, so now you're talking more.
Yeah.
Because I guarantee it's more than $5,000.
Yeah. I mean, it's expensive to run a campaign. There's just no.
Right.
So.
You actually hear that. So, like on the campaign side, you actually do hear that quite a bit when you're out knocking doors and everything. People are like, "Oh, well, stop knocking on my door and get TV ads." And you don't realize door knockers actually tend to be pretty cheap. A lot of times they're college interns who want to get into the campaign process, but TV ads are expensive.
Yeah.
People don't realize how expensive.
Well, the whole process is expensive because everything. I mean, your banner costs money. Everything costs money.
That's right.
Right, and
Lawn signs cost money.
yeah.
Yeah, they get up and vote.
Lots of money.
They pull themselves out of the grass and vote.
Yep.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I mean, that's always been the challenge. Is there's a cost to this process,
Mhm.
and it's just that it's a process, and that was one of the reasons why my family originally got involved. The three of us wanted to do this PAC was we wanted to do something. We didn't necessarily want to run, although that's even changed. He's looking at his lovely wife. But I mean, that's what we wanted to. We wanted to do something on the political side, but we didn't want to. We didn't necessarily.
At the time,
At
there
the
was
time.
no thinking about running for office.
Yeah. No. Correct.
To me, this is just kind of one of those things where government sets out to do one thing, and then they actually achieve the exact opposite. Like
Yeah.
we're trying to
Well-
keep money out of campaigning, and what it ends up doing is, like you were saying, is it protects the incumbent.
Right.
Right.
Well, the thing is that there's a lot of things that have good intentions when they go into it, but they don't always know what the unintended consequences end up being, and that's
Absolutely.
Clean Missouri has a lot of
Clean
unintended.
Missouri.
Well, and I think the thing with Clean Missouri is I know that Democrats from Houston, Texas are the ones that initiated this whole thing with Clean Missouri. And one thing is when Clean Missouri was really starting in the state of Missouri, PACs and the Republican Party was really adamantly against PACs. Republicans in general really have been against them because they've always wanted to be upfront and forward about where their money has come from.
Right.
But the Democrats have always hidden their money. Hence,
Right.
you have Hillary Clinton and her PAC and her charity, the Clinton Foundation. So all it did was make the Republicans switch to their Democrats' way of controlling the money. And I think they didn't think the Republicans would do that because Republicans have always been pretty honest about things.
Well, I will tell you that on both sides there are the big donors, right?
Yeah.
You've got the Koch brothers, you've got the George Soros of the world, and I think where it really boils down to, and we can fight against the aisle all the time, and that's I think what they want us to do. But when you have big money involved, they're always pushing the envelope for their own side. And I'm not trying to be that middle of the road guy. I'm a conservative, and I'm going to always lean to the conservative side. But I will say that money is the root of all evil. And that's what happens in politics. Both sides have their own issues. But when you start trying to take the big money people out of it, the unintended consequences happen, because they will always find a way to get their candidates elected. So there's not a way that I know of, unless you just took money completely out of the picture, but there's not a way for you to take money out of the picture.
Yeah, there's not.
It's just not going to happen. And when you start getting to the point where you say, okay, nobody can contribute, we're just going to have people do their own thing. Well, guess who's going to be in office?
The rich people.
The rich people, because they have the money to put out there. People like me don't.
Yeah,
So-
or the puppets that are willing to let the rich people control them, right?
Yeah,
That's-
because me and
those are
Shaun
the
were
two-
talking about, like, Ted Cruz refuses to take PAC money, and who's another one? There's one other one in the Senate, and I'm like, and me and Shaun were like, oh, that's sort of kind of cool. And at the same time, we're thinking, and like Shaun said, well, that means only rich people will
Yep,
control everything.
Exactly.
So, I mean, I think these people have good intentions, but I don't think they realize that there's states like ours that, unless you have a PAC, you're not gonna.
That's
Well, that's
right.
why we did. That's why we did the Heartland Fund, is because we wanted those $5, $10 contributions to be leveraged instead of a whole bunch of small fish. One big pond, and we could actually make some difference.
Right.
Make some,
Yep.
make some impact that way.
That's why I, as a candidate, want to really make sure that people understand that the Heartland Fund is someone I fully support, because you're not taking contributions from these huge lobbyists and such, even though I'm sure if you had the opportunity, you would gladly accept any contributions they would like to take.
Well, yeah.
But at the same time, you're really pushing the grassroots side of things and trying to help people who don't always have a voice
And that's
because they don't have the money to do so.
And that's exactly what we're planning on doing up in Gentry counties. We're actually taking that grassroots one step further. We're going to do that Sons and Daughters of Liberty club and really push from that direction too. All right. Well, I hate to push the wrap up. Yeah, I know. But we're going to take a small break now. And when we come back, we're going to talk a little bit about the Kansas City Police Defund. And we're actually going to light up our newsmaker line, which is very exciting. And we'll have our first call-in guest. So back in a minute. This portion of the podcast is sponsored by the Heartland Fund Incorporated, sponsoring issues and candidates that care. Appreciate the podcast? Well, it's expensive. Could we bother you for, say, a cup of coffee a month? For $5 a month, you can contribute to our grassroots effort. Donate online, day or night, at www.fundingtheheartland.com. Hello, sir or madam. We would love to hear from you. No, really, honestly. If you have any feedback, comments, or hate mail, or hate female, visit www.fundingtheheartland.com, or you can email us directly at media@fundingtheheartland.com.
Welcome back to Freedom Roundup. My name is Kress Cambers. All right, guys, we are going to be joined by State Representative Josh Hurlbert from District 12.
The reason he's making sure to pronounce it correctly is the entire time he was practicing the name,
He kept saying
Greg
Sherbert.
kept saying Sherbert into his ear. So we're trying desperately to make sure that doesn't happen.
Awesome, Josh. You don't even know how much fun we have on this.
Sorry,
podcast.
Representative. So,
Does he get grief done at the Capitol for his name for not being called
No,
Sherbert?
actually, he doesn't. He sits right beside me, too.
Are you going to call him Sherbert next time you see him?
I'm going to definitely call him Sherbert.
Oh, it's like honey, it's like us and the little Jack Horner jokes. I mean, we get those a lot.
Yeah, but now we actually are on the corner.
And speaking of our newsmaker line, you gonna answer? Okay, go.
all right, let's welcome in Representative Josh Hurlbert from District 12. He is a state representative from Clay and Platte County. Hurlbert worked in politics since graduating from college. He served as a senior field representative for U.S. Congressman Sam Graves.
Okay.
Yay!
Representative Hurlbert was elected to his first 2-year term in November of 2020. Everybody, let's welcome in Representative Hurlbert.
Yay!
Yeah, thanks for having me. Glad to be here.
So, Representative, there's a lot going on in Kansas City right now, especially with defunding the police. That is a big, big topic on the news. Can you kind of tell us what is going on in Kansas City? I know you represent the Northland up there. What are you seeing? What are you hearing? And what are your thoughts?
Yeah, so what the city council did with no public input was they passed an ordinance that created a criminal, crime-fighting fund per se, that took away, $42 million from the Kansas City Police Department, and ostensibly they'll give it back, but they haven't, actually put up the guidelines for how they are going to give it back to the police department, or what other streams are going to put as part of this. They are just trying to gain some leverage over the police department that they statutorily do not have. So that's where we stand currently. I guess the other big news that's come out about it, it's been the Board of Police Commissioners filing a lawsuit. The state of Missouri actually filing it on behalf of the Board of Police Commissioners to reinstate that funding. And then myself and 3 other Northland state representatives have called on the governor to call a special session to try and deal with this legislatively as well. So a lot of moving parts right now, but what it really boils down to is that this was a dangerous and reckless move by the mayor and the 8 city council members that voted yes on this, all from Jackson County. The 4 from north of the river. It's bipartisan. I mean, it's 3 Democrats and 1 Republican, all voted no on it.
So, Representative, Representative, were you one of the state reps to sign a letter to the mayor? Because the mayor keeps saying that there were some state representatives from Northland that wrote a letter to him expressing their displeasure for him, quote unquote, reallocating funds from the police department back to the police department.
I don't know about any letter that went to him. Me and the 4 other Republican representatives who all represent part of Kansas City proper, all wrote a letter to the governor asking for a special session on this issue. But no, we've not written to Mayor Lucas himself.
Representative, this is Shaun Horner. The question I had was, and I wanted to kind of educate our listeners a little bit more about why it has remained state controlled when it comes to the Kansas City Police Department as well. Do you have a little bit on that?
Sure. So it all stems from prohibition, which is why we never should pass prohibition. But it all stems from prohibition. So Tom Pendergast was boss of Kansas City, mayor from time to time, but kind of controlled the political scene in Kansas City. And that included then the police department, which he corrupted and was using for his own needs. The state finally came around, and I believe it was in 1943, they moved to take away control of the police department from the city and appoint a 5-person board, one of which being the mayor and the other 4 being other citizens of Kansas City who have lived in Kansas City for a number of years, and to actually be the ones with authority over the police department. So there's been talk from time to time about trying to bring the police department back under local control. It was something that Quentin Lucas was pushing pretty hard this past session for the legislature to restore some local control. And when we did it the next week, he tries to grab that control anyway.
So, Representative, I know would like the governor to call for a special session. What would you like to see out of this special session?
Well, there's a couple ways we can handle this issue. One would be just to, pass statutory language certifying that any funding for a state-controlled police department has to run through the Board of Commissioners. outside of federal grants or something along those lines. You can't have a side pot that the city has that they can direct towards the police board, but require some strings attached to it. The other thing would be, raising the percentage that the city has to give the Board of Police Commissioners. Right now, it is at least 20% of the city's budget has to go towards the Board of Police Commissioners. It's been that way for decades, and maybe it might be time to revisit that number, especially in light of where we stand right now with Kansas City, with the outrageous homicide rate that we have in Kansas City, that we saw record highs last year, and we're on pace to come pretty close to it again this year.
Hey, Representative, this is one of your neighbors on the floor, Representative Coleman. Just in light of what you just said, it's come to light that there may be some legal issues in reference to how that vote went on the city council, where they left the Northland council members out of the decision until the day of the vote. Is there actually, based upon the charter, some legal comeback on that, or is that just kind of hearsay?
Yeah, I honestly couldn't tell you, Representative, if that is where that stands in the charter. I haven't heard that myself, so I'm not familiar enough with the issue and what kind of notice requirements that they have in their city charter. But
Sure.
yeah, but the interesting thing is that they passed this with no public input for really no reason. They had the vote. They could have gone through the process and saved themselves the headache, but they rushed it with no public input, and now they're getting plenty of public pushback. And it's really unified some areas, especially here north of the river, against what the city is. I mean, we can barely get our trash picked up here.
Well, yeah.
Let alone.
Yeah, because that last council meeting that they just had, was it yesterday? It was packed. Or that was a Thursday.
Yeah.
Thursday.
It was a Thursday. It was packed.
Thursday.
It was out the door there. You couldn't fit everybody in the room.
Yeah, I tried to attend Thursday night. There was a town hall up in the Northland. And, yeah, I was one of the ones that got locked out of the building because I made the mistake of pulling in the parking lot a minute before it started. And the fire marshal had already shut it down at that point, so I couldn't get in. So there's a lot of interest up here. It's really unified the community up here because we know how dangerous this is. We already, on a good day, we have 6 CCTV police officers north of the river. 6. And when we have things going on south of the river, sometimes it's one sergeant patrolling the entire Northland.
So
that's currently, let alone what happens when you threaten 400 positions with this funding cut.
how will this affect I know one of the departments that are supposed to be quote unquote defunded or reallocated is Central Command, which isn't that?
That's near Troost.
Yeah, downtown Kansas City, the inner city. How would that affect them as well?
Yeah, I mean, they outlined East Central and I think Metro stations as well were the ones that were being hardest hit because they have nowhere left to cut up here. But the real root of the issue is that if you want to get back to community policing and building relationships with your community members and having those relationships where people feel they can come forward to the police with any information they have, you've got to have cops on the streets. You've got to have the numbers. You've got to have these vacancies filled. We have 116 vacant positions that we haven't been able to fill. So you've got to have boots on the ground if you want to actually build those relationships and actually try and close some of these cases and be able to stop things before they happen. I mean,
Hey,
you have
Josh.
to talk to people on the ground in order to find out where the hot spots are and where the problem areas are to try and prevent some of the issues we've had.
Awesome. Hey, Josh, this is Greg. One question I wanted to ask you, and one of the things I keep reading about is Mayor Lucas talks about the, Community Services and Prevention Fund. I was kind of wondering if you could expand on that, what that is, because the thing that comes to my mind is like a social service worker trying to break up like a domestic dispute. So I'm just kind of curious more if we know anything about what he's planning with that.
No, we do not. The city council has not. They've put the $42 million that they took from the police and put it into this fund, but they don't have any guidelines on the fund. What they would like to see it used for. It's just kind of sitting there right now. So yeah, it could, and increasing, civilian social workers, mental health workers. That's all good. I'm not necessarily. I don't think anyone would oppose to see those funding for those kind of positions and an increase in those kind of positions. But you can't do that by cutting cops. You can't send a social worker into a dangerous situation without that cover. So you got to do it on top. And the ironic thing about this is that the city of Kansas City is getting $195 million in Biden bucks from the American Recovery Plan. You had $195 million coming in. You couldn't find any of that to do this with your fund to increase some of these social workers. Instead, you want to take it away from the cops. It makes no sense. It's a complete power grab by the mayor, and it's dangerous and reckless for our community.
So let's make this clear. We have heard this several times when the mayor was on Pete Mundo's show, and then he went on Harris Faulkner, and he did a couple of local TV interviews. He said that he is not defunding the police, but he is reallocating funds from the Kansas City Police Department and putting it back into the police department.
Your guess is as good as mine as how he can figure that out. But yeah, and again, he doesn't have what strings he's going to put on this funding to give it back to the police department. It's still unclear. So it's a complete power grab on his part.
I think he's just trying to circle around.
There's that too.
He'll circle around.
There's the gin joke. So if you had that on your bingo card, you can mark it off.
Bingo. Did you have a question?
No.
Last question.
No. Last question. Yeah. So we have kind of a running question, Representative, that we always give. Can you name the Golden State?
California.
That's where I'm from. Drink again.
So it's a running joke, Representative, that anytime we say California during the podcast,
Oh gosh, Golden State.
that the drinking has to happen. So
Clearly, I should have been listening to your podcast for a while.
You clearly should be. We will welcome you in at any time.
Yeah, anytime you want to actually come in person, we are actually sitting around Representative Coleman's dining room table. So that is our sound studio, and it is herding cats. It's a lot of fun. We have a lot of fun doing it. Let me tell you.
This is Representative Coleman, and as always, we appreciate you being here tonight, especially on short notice.
Yeah, thank you.
We appreciate your input, and you just have an awesome weekend, and be safe.
Yeah, happy Memorial Day.
All right.
Happy Memorial Day, yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you, sir.
Absolutely. Take care, guys. Thanks for having me on the Freedom Roundup.